inflation was low in Asia. All right, China wasn't seeing the same sort of inflation we were seeing over here, because over here we eat generally a different diet than those in Asia. What we can see here, folks, is rice in Asia soars to highest levels since 2008. So again, you're starting to see this big move up now into 2023 of rice, which again is an inflationary signal. And what that's going to do is it's going to put more pressure on the Chinese government, more pressure on Japan to be careful and maybe not control that yield curve quite as much. And again, that is something that has to be looked at as a concerning factor. The other thing I want to bring to your attention here as well is this is business demand for bank loans, US versus Europe. To be honest, I don't really care the fact that it's US versus Europe. They're just two separate lines. You have Europe being the light blue, the dark blue being the US. My purpose of showing this to you guys is this. If we look at demand for bank loans, it has fallen off a cliff, okay? And if we look at that and we go back to 2008, we're approaching the same levels as loans demand in 2008, right? So that does have to raise your attention. You have to say, wait a minute, what does that mean? And the reason why this is important is if you look at what causes economic growth, it's money in the system. It's people taking out loans and using that to start businesses and create revenue streams, which then create taxes, which then create more jobs and jobs and jobs and jobs and things like that. And speaking of jobs, the last thing I'll say on this before we get into some chart action is if you looked at the latest jobs report, the non-farm payrolls report that came out, I think it was last Friday or so, what we saw was a gain of 187,000. But if you looked at the underbelly, and this is the big thing, folks, is like, you know, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. And my point here is that if you looked at the underbelly of that economic data that came out, the non-farm payrolls report, you would see that government jobs were a huge gain, but most other sectors, most private sectors were down. They cut jobs. And so again, you could argue that with the US getting this unlimited budget, right, the debt ceiling was raised to unlimited levels, they're now able to spend lots of money, which again goes into the idea of Bidenomics and, you know, just saying, hey, we got to win this election next year. Let's spend, 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 spend. And that's the overall lipstick, right? That's the overall lipstick that we're seeing. But in the underbelly of the economy, in the private sector, things are changing. And again, this is something that raises my alarm bells. All right,